faithfully delivering value by exploring great books from around the world.
Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk.
Today, we're interpreting the book called When the World Was Young, The Chinese Who Fought in the Spanish Civil War. The authors are Chinese-American scientists Ni Huiru and Zhou Ningguan. On July 17, 1936, the young Second Spanish Republic faced its biggest challenge since birth. And that day, Francisco Franco, a military strongman, launched a coup in southern Spain, sparking the Spanish Civil War. It lasted 3 years, ending with Franco's win and the Republican government's fall. In terms of the war's scale, impact, and casualty numbers, among 20th century wars, the Spanish Civil War might not rank high, but in attention and influence, it's totally up there. From the moment war broke out, global media covered it, grabbing the world's eyes. Even decades after, many folks still hold this war dear in their hearts. French writer and Nobel Prize winner Albert Camus, he said, "Our generation keeps Spain in mind. It's a wound on our hearts." Why is the Spanish Civil War so unforgettable? This ties to the war's nature. One side was the Republican government, made up of communists, socialists, etc., and the other was Franco's fascist forces, backed fully by Nazi Germany and Italy. So, this war was seen as progressive forces' first stand against fascism, igniting global passion. People condemned fascist cruelty and rushed to the front. Stats show over 40,000 volunteers from 53 countries went to Spain during the 3-year war. They formed the International Brigades, fighting Franco's rebels. Folks like British writer Orwell, American writer Hemingway, and Canadian Dr. Bethune, we know were among them, plus countless ordinary people who crossed oceans out of simple justice. This included over 100 Chinese volunteers who overcame huge hurdles to fight alongside global progressives in Spain, contributing to the anti-fascist cause. Sadly, time flew by, and these volunteers were forgotten, their stories barely known. Fortunately, scientists Ni Huiru and Zhou Ningguan spent over 20 years traveling Europe and America to interview survivors, gather info, and piece together their lives, bringing this buried history to light. Next, I'll talk about this book. When the World Was Young, I'll divide my telling into 3 parts. Part 1 is about finding the Chinese who fought in the Spanish Civil War. Part 2, what kind of group were the Chinese volunteers? Part 3, the experiences of Chinese people in the Spanish Civil War. Finally, I'll also cover their post-war whereabouts and life outcomes. It should be noted that the figures I discuss include overseas Chinese. I'll call them Chinese or Chinese volunteers for simplicity. All right, now let's get to part 1, finding the Chinese who fought in the Spanish Civil War, which starts with a movie-watching experience. In the winter of 1986, the book's authors, Chinese-American scientists Zhou Ningguan and Ni Huiru, watched a documentary in New York called The Battle for Justice about the Spanish Civil War. Through the film, they learned for the first time that this war attracted over 40,000 international volunteers. They came from all over the world, including teachers, journalists, writers, artists, as well as miners, carpenters, sailors, and drivers. The wide range of regions and diversity of professions made the Spanish Civil War a truly international conflict. Why did so many people travel thousands of miles to fight in a foreign land? After watching the documentary, the authors had this question, so they started researching materials on the Spanish Civil War to find answers. Coincidentally, 1986 marked the 50th anniversary of the Spanish Civil War's outbreak, and American veteran volunteers who fought organized commemorative events and published a memorial booklet with a list of American participants. Oh. While reading this list, the authors noticed 3 names: Dong Hong, E.K. Chi, Chong, and Edwin Wang. These weren't common English names, they sounded Chinese. Could they be? At first, the authors couldn't believe it, because according to historical records, the international brigades included Europeans, Americans, Indians, Cubans, Brazilians, Peruvians, even a Japanese person, but no Chinese. Thinking about it, it made sense. In 1936, Chinese people were facing Japanese invaders, barely managing their own troubles. How could they have time to go fight abroad? So this thought just passed by, briefly, until November 1988, when the authors attended another commemorative event in New York. At the event, an American volunteer veteran told them, "I have a friend who knows a Chinese person who fought in the Spanish Civil War. I can take you to meet him." So, the authors visited Kenneth Grabo, an American veteran of the International Brigades. Grabo recalled that after the Spanish Civil War broke out, he joined and went to the battlefield. In the summer of 1937, because he had jaundice, Grabo was sent to Benicassim, a seaside town in southeastern Spain, for treatment. In the same ward as him was a Chinese wounded soldier named E.K. Could this be that Dong Hong Yi-K on the list? After asking, Grabo confirmed it, and he showed old photos where Yi-K indeed had an Eastern face.
According to Grabo, EK spoke English fluently. He was probably a Chinese American born in the U.S.
This lifted the author's spirits. There really were Chinese who fought in the Spanish Civil War. Sadly, Yi-K died in 1938, and Grabo knew little about his details. That's all the info for now. But at least there's a lead, and the author's search for Chinese people spread among American volunteer veterans. Everyone was enthusiastic, offering clues. Guided by someone, the authors went to Harvard Library to find two newspapers, New York Vanguard and Paris Rescue Times. As it turned out, this move was crucial for the search work. First, let's talk about New York Vanguard, a weekly founded by Chinese Americans. In the 1930s, it often reported on the Spanish Civil War. If there were Chinese participants, it definitely wouldn't miss it. Sure enough, the authors found in the Vanguard communications from several Chinese volunteers in Spain, one named Zhang Ji, whose name sounds like Chang, on the list. Research confirmed it was him. Zhang Ji said he drove for the international brigades with American companions, showing he was Chinese American. Another one named Chen Wen, interestingly, was a wealthy merchant from New York who got hospital treatment. The authors later verified he was the doctor who shared the ward with Grabo.
Now let's look at Paris Rescue Times.
This newspaper was special. Founded by Chinese communists in France, it reported on China's anti-Japanese efforts and closely followed the global anti-fascist movement. The Spanish Civil War was naturally a key focus for it. Sure enough, the authors found, in Rescue Times, a report stating over 100 Chinese compatriots fought in Spain. This information is crucial. It means the Chinese who fought in Spain weren't just 3 people on a list, but over 100. They weren't just Chinese Americans. Some came from France, Indonesia, Cuba, even mainland China. In other words, Chinese worldwide joined this international anti-fascist war. The authors felt a surge of historical duty. They recalled one thing. The international brigades had a Japanese American named Kenji Takei, the only Japanese in the war. He died in battle. Japan honors him. Historians wrote biographies, and Tokyo's Unknown Soldier Cemetery has his tombstone. Truly memorialized, yet China had over 100 fighters with 0 records. What a tragedy.
So the authors vowed, we must find these Chinese, learn why they risked lives to fight in Spain. They traveled across Europe, America, Asia, and China itself.
Gathering testimonies and materials through 20-plus years, they finally unveiled the Chinese volunteers' stories. Now, part 2. Let's explore this group. Over 100 Chinese volunteers came globally, mostly from France. This ties to China-France historical connections. In 1914, WWN erupted. European men enlisted en masse, causing labor shortages. China's Beiyang government recruited laborers for Britain and France to fill gaps. Records show 143,000-plus Chinese laborers went to Britain, France, during W1. Most returned post-war. But some stayed, like Jean Rouchu, born in 1893 in Shandong's Yutai County to poverty. Orphaned at 18, he joined the army to survive. In 1917, Zhang saw a French recruitment poster at Nanjing's Puku docks. It said, Huimin Company seeks Chinese laborers. 20 to 35. For France, 3 francs per day, 50 francs signing bonus, room and board covered. Zhang Rushu was tempted. He signed the contract and sailed to France with over 1,800 fellow laborers. Upon arrival, they worked at a factory near Paris. In November 1918, Germany surrendered, ending World War I. As soldiers demobilized en masse, France's labor supplies shifted from shortage to surplus, making Chinese workers unnecessary. So the Chinese laborers returned home one after another. But Zhang Rushu didn't want to go back. He wanted to earn more money. Through connections, Zhang got into Renault's factory in Paris suburbs. There he met fellow Shandong native Liu Jingtian, 3 years older and also working there. As compatriots with similar temperaments, they quickly became close friends, supporting each other in this foreign land. Later, when they went to fight in Spain, they went together. How interesting! Zhang and Liu came to France to work. Why abandon jobs to fight in an unfamiliar country? This was closely tied to social conditions. WWN devastated Europe. Take France. Over 5 million casualties, industrial and agricultural decline, 1919 food crisis. Workers' living standards plummeted, fueling discontent. The French Communist Party rose, promoting communism to workers, a society without exploitation, where all had food, shelter, and education. The PCF also organized strikes demanding rights from government and capitalists. Amid this, Zhang and Liu grew attracted to communism. In 1925, both joined the French Communist Party. Their membership was with Renault's factory branch. In February 1936, Spain's Popular Front, including communists and socialists, won elections and took power. In July, Franco's fascists launched a rebellion. PCF leaders immediately called members to form international brigades. Renault's branch recruited workers. By then, Zhang and Liu were veteran members with over a decade in the party. They enlisted without hesitation. The authors found several French-Chinese laborers like Zhang and Liu joined. Additionally, young Chinese intellectuals were another group actively joining the Spanish Civil War. This leads to another major backdrop, the work-study movement in France. During the May 4th New Culture movement, China saw a surge in this trend, with young people going abroad to study while working to earn tuition and sustain themselves. As the birthplace of modern ideas like freedom and democracy, France was already a beacon for Chinese youth, so many chose to go there, just as communist doctrines were spreading widely, quickly attracting these young knowledge seekers. In the autumn of 1922, Zhou Enlai, Zhao Xian, Chen Qianyan, and others established an early organization of the Chinese Communist Party in Paris. Documents from the CCP Europe branch show that by early 1926, it had about 70 members, mostly work-study students in France, and one of them ties into our story. His name is Shi Weijing. Shi Weijing was born in 1904 in Bishan, Chongqing, to a wealthy family and went to Shanghai for schooling at age 12. During the May 4th movement, he was deeply inspired and joined the work-study movement to seek truth for saving the nation. By the end of 1919, Shi Weijing arrived in France. After that, he studied in places like the UK and Germany, developing a strong interest in the Russian October Revolution and believing communism alone could save China. In 1925, Shi Weijing joined the Chinese Communist Youth League in Europe, transferring to the CCP Europe branch the next year to become a party member. While doing revolutionary work in Europe after the Spanish Civil War broke out, Shi Weijing joined the international brigades. Why did he make this choice? The authors analyzed that China's situation was highly tense then, with the war of resistance against Japan imminent. The party organization sent Shi Weijing to Spain to gain modern warfare experience and prepare for the resistance. From the experiences of Zhang Rushu, Liu Jingtian, and Shi Weijing, we see they went to Spain, mobilized and arranged by local communist groups, which was very common then. In fact, Most International Brigade fighters came this way. Why was that? It turns out that after the French Communist Party proposed forming the International Brigades, it gained approval from the Communist International. Thus, communist organizations worldwide, from Britain, the US, Germany, Italy, to Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and on to India, the Philippines, Indonesia, Brazil, all sprang into action recruiting volunteers. Many young Communist Party members enthusiastically enlisted to resist fascism, including over 100 Chinese scattered across Europe, America, Southeast Asia, and beyond. By, like Zhang Ji and Chen Wenhua, Chinese-American volunteers, first discovered by the authors, who joined the American Communist Party, and also Indonesian Chinese Bai Daowen. Bai Daowen joined the German Communist Party while studying medicine in Germany, which led him to serve in the International Brigade's medical team. Of course, some individuals had rather unique situations. For instance, Chen Agen, currently known as the only one who went directly from China to Spain. Records showed Chen Agen was a worker in Shanghai, wanted by the Kuomintang government for union activism. To evade capture, he became a cook's assistant on a French steamship, which soon set sail for Europe. Chen again got familiar with the cook. He was amazed to find the cook was Vietnamese, fluent in French, and 5 Chinese dialects. He discussed global affairs extensively with Chen Agen, leaving the latter utterly awestruck. The cook also said Spain was in civil war, with rebels backed by Germany and Italy. If they won, the whole world would suffer. The cook urged Chen Agen to go to Spain and resist fascism. Chen Agen was persuaded while on the steamship. When the ship docked in La Coruña in northwest Spain, he jumped off and joined the Civil War. Based on Chen Agen's account, historians speculate that Vietnamese cook might have been Ho Chi Minh, future founder of Vietnam's Communist Party. All right, to sum up, Chinese in the Spanish Civil War came mostly from France, America, and Southeast Asia. Most were local communists, driven by faith in communism and hatred of fascism, to fight alongside international volunteers. In part 3, I'll cover what they experienced in the Spanish Civil War. First, we need to address how these Chinese entered the battlefield. After the Spanish Civil War erupted, nations like Britain and France pretended neutrality, but secretly favored Franco's rebels. They banned arms shipments to the Republican government, closed the France-Spain border, and controlled sea routes. Regular entry routes for volunteers were blocked, forcing them to sneak in. Typically, volunteers would settle in southern France first, then head to the Pyrenees Mountains at night. The Pyrenees span the France-Spain border for 435 kilometers. Volunteers easily dodged French sentry posts to cross over. Afterward, volunteers reported to Albacete, a small town southeast of Madrid, the International Brigade's headquarters, where global volunteers were assigned to units. Zhang Rushu and Liu Jingtian, the Chinese laborers from France mentioned earlier, arrived this way. In November 1936, they became the first Chinese to join the Spanish Civil War. Zhang Rushu and Liu Jingtian were assigned to the 14th International Brigade, also called the Marseillaise Brigade, named after France's national anthem. Since the unit was mostly French, headquarters likely considered their French work experience, language skills, and Communist Party membership. Being over 40 and physically limited for frontline combat, they served as medics instead. This didn't mean lower risks. In fact, medics often braved gunfire to rescue wounded soldiers, facing casualty rates as high as combat troops. Zhang and Liu were wounded multiple times, chest, shoulders, hands, and feet, yet fearlessly saved many lives, earning high praise from the Republican government. Spanish media competed to report on them. Zhang Rushu's photo was even made into a 1-meter propaganda poster displayed on Madrid streets. Another Chinese volunteer, Shi Weijing, arrived later in April 1937. He reported to Albacete and was assigned to the 11th International Brigade, the famed Thalmann Brigade. Ernst Fahlmann, German Communist Party chairman, was imprisoned by Nazis. Naming the brigade after him signaled its exiled German communists and anti-Nazis. Quite intriguing. How did Xi Jinping, a Chinese man, end up with Germans? Possibly because Germany was Xi's primary base during European revolutionary activities. He had even interacted with Fellman as China's representative. One detail reveals his status. He wasn't a regular soldier, but served as political commissar and party committee secretary in the brigade's anti-tank battalion. In July 1937, the Republican government launched a counteroffensive against Franco's rebels with 28 brigades. This was Xi Jinping's first battle. Fighting was brutal. Cannon barrels overheated from constant firing. Soldiers cooled them with water, then urine when water ran out. Despite the Republican Army's brave fighting, they eventually retreated across the board due to inferior equipment.
In August, Xi Jinping participated in the Battle of Belchite, where a bullet shattered his right knee, causing blood to gush out instantly.
After being wounded, Xi Jinping was sent to the hospital for treatment. There, he met several wounded Chinese soldiers, including French-Chinese laborers Zhang Rushu and Liu Jingtian, and American-Chinese Chen Wenyao and Zhang Ji. Remember these two? They are the Zhang Ji and Chen Wenrao mentioned by the book's authors. From the Memorial Book of American Volunteers, it was discovered that, regrettably, Chen Wenrao died in battle soon after recovering from his wounds and returning to the front. From their experiences, it can be seen that almost every Chinese volunteer was wounded, and some sacrificed their lives. The same goes for volunteers from other countries. According to statistics, among all over 40,000 international fighters, 1/3 died in battle, with some units' casualty rates as high as 75%. So how many were the lucky ones who weren't wounded? The answer is 7%. Modern warfare is just that cruel. After recovering, Xi Jinping returned to the Thelman Brigade, but with a lame leg, he couldn't go to the front line, so he took up writing work. At that time, the War of Resistance against Japan had already broken out, so Xi Jinping introduced China's situation to Spanish readers on one hand, and on the other hand, summarized his combat experience and transmitted it back to China through various channels. He also closely followed the fate of the Spanish Civil War and Chinese volunteers. Yannan's Liberation Weekly had detailed reports on the war. In March and April of 1938, Xi Jinping received a special gift, a bright red silk banner inscribed with Chinese and Spanish people unite to defeat the common enemy of humanity. Signed by Zhu Dai, Zhou Enlai, and Peng Dehuai, this banner was specially entrusted by the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party to be brought by a sailor. Brought all the way from Shanghai, it symbolized that the Chinese and Spanish peoples were fighting fascism in the East and West, respectively, closely connected, sharing the same breath and fate. However, the situation was becoming increasingly unfavorable for the Republican government. And with strong support from Germany and Italy, Franco's rebels had occupied most of Spain, leaving the Republican government with only a few major cities like Madrid and Barcelona. At this point, divisions arose within the Republican government, with some leaders advocating for the withdrawal of the international brigades to gain sympathy from Britain and France and force Franco into negotiations. In September 1938, Spanish Prime Minister Negrin unilaterally announced in Geneva that international volunteers would gradually withdraw. Thus, the mission of the international brigades in Spain came to an end. As planned, international volunteers first withdrew to the Cerbère area in southern France for reassignment. That's how Xi Jinping arrived in Cerbère on foot and met other Chinese there. Among them were familiar faces like Zhang Rushu and Liu Jingtian, as well as newly met overseas Chinese from Indonesia, Bi Daowen, French-Chinese laborer Yang Chunrong, and others. This gathering lasted only a short time. Soon, Chinese volunteers were sent to different locations. Many never saw each other again. So the story of the Chinese in the Spanish Civil War ended, but their own stories continued. Therefore, I'll finally introduce these volunteers' whereabouts and life outcomes. It should be noted that most of these 100-plus Chinese volunteers faded into obscurity. The authors could only conclude from existing materials that many survivors overcame hardships to return to China and join the War of Resistance. For example, Zhang Rushu and Lu Jingtian made their way to Yan'an and joined the Chinese Communist Party in 1940. Yang Rishu later worked in the archives of Liberation Daily and passed away in 1968 at age 75. Liu Jingtian worked in construction engineering until his death in 1953. Shi Weijing first sailed from France to Singapore, then to Vietnam, and took a train to Yunnan. In June 1940, Shi Weijing arrived in Chongqing, contacted the 8th Route Army Office, and engaged in foreign liaison work. During the Liberation War, Shi served as deputy director of the political department in the 4th Field Army's Special Forces, participating in liberating Tianjin, Beijing, Wuhan, etc. After founding the PRC, he became deputy minister of Air Force Engineering. Shi Weijing passed away in October 1978. Before his death, he organized 2 large boxes of materials on Chinese volunteers, including that silk banner, and donated them to the Military Museum of the Chinese Revolution. We have now, compared to the above, Bai Dawin's experience was more complex. Born in 1906 to an ethnic Chinese family in Indonesia, Indonesia was then under Dutch colonial rule, but nationalist undercurrents surged. Many local elites longed to expel colonizers for independence. Deeply influenced by Darwin in his early 20s, Bai Dawin went to Amsterdam, Netherlands, to study medicine, where he embraced communism and joined the Dutch Communist Party. After the Spanish Civil War broke out, Bai Dawin answered the call to join the international brigades. As a military doctor, he worked diligently, saving every wounded soldier he could, deeply loved by the troops. After the international solidarity, After the international brigades withdrew from Spain, Bai Dawin made his way to China to join the War of Resistance, accompanied by comrades like Canadian Dr. Bethune, Indian Dr. Cotness, and German Dr. Baer. These doctors joined the anti-Japanese war front with internationalist spirit. In December 1949, Indonesia declared independence from Dutch colonial rule. In 1953, Bida Wen returned to his homeland, practicing medicine in Jakarta, Surabaya, while maintaining correspondence with friends in China and Europe. In September 1965, Indonesia experienced a coup where hundreds of thousands of Chinese perished. Since then, Bai Dawin's whereabouts became unknown. The authors speculate Bai Dawin likely perished, his name and experiences buried like those of other Chinese volunteers from Spain. Only through dedicated researchers like the authors did this distant history resurface. So, how should history view these choices? I'll conclude with French writer Albert Camus, who commemorated the 9th anniversary of the Spanish Civil War. And so, he wrote, "As long as this land of freedom remains under tyranny, who can claim freedom? When one person wears chains, we all wear shackles. None are free until all are free." Camus meant that the international volunteers fought for the freedom of all humanity. All right, that concludes When the World Was Young. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.